Welcome to this note-taking listening practice. Today, we will examine the fast fashion paradox and explore the hidden environmental and social costs of our clothing consumption. Before the lecture begins, please take a look at the 5 subheadings on your screen to help structure your notes. You can also download the complete note-taking outline as a free PDF from the description below. Get your pen and paper ready, and let's begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please take your seats. Today, we are going to dive into a complex, multi-billion-dollar global phenomenon known as the fast fashion paradox. To start with the global scale of the fast fashion industry, we need to trace its origins back to the late 1990s, when mass-market retailers began rapidly producing inexpensive clothing to mimic the latest catwalk trends. While it has democratized fashion, the scale today is staggering. According to a recent report by the World Economic Forum, global clothing production has roughly doubled since the year 2000. To give you a concrete figure, the world now consumes over 100 billion garments every single year. At the same time, the fashion industry has become one of the world's largest polluters, accounting for exactly 10% of all global carbon emissions. That is more than international flights and maritime shipping combined. The real paradox here is that while the average consumer buys 60% more clothes than they did 15 years ago, they keep them for only half as long. We have transformed clothing from a durable possession into a disposable commodity. Now, keeping these shocking figures in mind, let's move our attention to the massive environmental footprint of this industry, looking specifically at the water crisis and textile waste. Let's talk about water first. The fashion industry is incredibly thirsty. According to data from the Water Footprint Network, to grow the cotton needed for just one standard t-shirt requires about 2,700 liters of water. To put that into perspective, 2,700 liters is enough water for one average human being to drink for exactly 900 days, almost 2.5 years. One single t-shirt. Furthermore, the chemical dyes used to color these clothes are often dumped untreated into rivers like the Citarum River in Indonesia, turning vital water sources toxic and heavy with lead and mercury. But the environmental crisis continues when clothes are thrown away. According to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, 73% of the world's clothing ends up in landfills or is burned every single year. Because fast fashion garments are manufactured cheaply, brands rely heavily on synthetic fibers like polyester, nylon, and acrylic. These are essentially petroleum-based plastics. Today, the equivalent of one garbage truck full of textiles is landfilled or burned every single second worldwide. When these clothes sit in landfills, they take up to 200 years to decompose, and every time they are washed, they release millions of microplastics into our oceans. This devastating environmental reality naturally begs a very important question. Why do we keep buying despite these costs? To understand this, we must examine the psychological triggers behind our behavior, driven heavily by microtrends and social media. Historically, the fashion industry operated on 4 distinct seasons a year. Fast fashion completely shattered this calendar. Today, giant retail corporations like Zara and H&M do not operate on 4 seasons. They operate on up to 52 micro-seasons a year. That means a brand new line of clothing is introduced every single week. This artificial sense of urgency is amplified heavily by social media algorithms. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok are carefully engineered to create a constant state of FOMO, the fear of missing out. Influencers display new clothing hauls daily, promoting the idea that wearing an outfit more than once or twice online is a social taboo. Hyper-personalized digital ads target users based on their browsing history, triggering impulse buying. The psychology here is simple. Fast fashion brands aren't just selling fabric, they are selling a temporary hit of dopamine wrapped in a cheap price tag. However, as young economists and global citizens, we must always remember a fundamental rule. When a product is incredibly cheap to buy, it usually means someone, somewhere else, is paying the real price. This realization leads us directly to the deeply troubling social and ethical costs in developing nations. To maintain massive profit margins while keeping retail prices low, Western fashion houses outsource almost all of their manufacturing to developing nations, predominantly to countries like Bangladesh, Cambodia, and India. In these regions, labor laws are weak, and minimum wages are kept artificially low. The human cost of this business model is a vital part of today's discussion. Millions of garment workers, 85% of whom are young women, work up to 16 hours a day in hazardous environments. We all remember the tragic collapse of the Rana Plaza factory in Bangladesh back in 2013, which killed over 1,100 workers and made international headlines. That wasn't an isolated accident. It was the predictable result of a systemic rush to produce garments faster and cheaper. There is a profound ethical contradiction in modern society when a consumer can buy a t-shirt for less than the price of a cup of coffee, while the person who stitched that t-shirt cannot afford basic health care. Now, I recognize that up to this point, our discussion paints a quite grim picture of our globalized world. But the purpose of our lecture today is not just to identify the crisis, but to analyze the paths forward. So, let's transition into our final area of study for today, moving towards slow fashion and a circular economy. The concept of slow fashion is our first alternative. It is an intentional slowing down of the consumption cycle, encouraging consumers to prioritize quality over quantity, to buy fewer garments, but choose items that are durable, ethically made, and designed to last. On an industrial and systemic level, the answer lies in transitioning from a linear economy, which is take, make, waste, to a circular economy designed to eliminate waste entirely. For instance, the European Union recently introduced the 2030 Strategy for Sustainable and Circular Textiles. This policy framework aims to ensure that all textile products on the market are durable, repairable, and recyclable by the end of the decade. In a truly circular fashion system, garments are designed from the very beginning with their end in mind, using organic monomaterials like 100% organic cotton or hemp that can naturally biodegrade, or using advanced technologies to melt down old synthetic jackets into brand new garments without losing quality. To conclude today's lecture, reversing the fast fashion paradox requires a multi-layered approach. It requires stricter international regulations, such as those discussed at the Geneva Environmental Conventions. But most importantly, it requires a cultural shift in our own minds to start viewing ourselves as active caretakers of our global environment. Thank you for your time today. Please take the next few minutes to review the notes you've taken under our 5 main areas. Ensure your structure is clear, and prepare your summaries for our discussion next week. See you all on Thursday.
All right, it is time to test your notes. Answer the following questions and check your score. Good luck! That concludes today's listening session. To stay updated with our next videos, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye for now.